Welcome to the deep dive. You hand us the sources, the articles, the official statements, all of it.
And our mission is to cut through that noise. We distill what's essential, we find the conflicts, and we deliver the insights you really need.
Today, we are deep diving into a national flashpoint. This is one that is really testing the absolute limits of federal authority.
And not just authority, but the reliability of what the government says versus what people are seeing with their own eyes. It's about trust.
We're talking about the fatal shooting of Renée Good by an ICE officer. This happened in Minneapolis, January 7th, 2026.
And this incident just escalated immediately. It wasn't just a local tragedy.
No. It became something much bigger because of the staggering speed of the official federal response compared to what video evidence seems to show.
So our sources really give us a roadmap here. First, we're going to establish the confirmed facts, what we actually know.
Right. Then we'll get into that clash, the federal allegations versus what the videos and local officials are saying.
And then the big picture. We'll look at the policy fault lines, specifically shooting at moving vehicles, and maybe most importantly, what are the actual steps needed to restore any faith in this investigation?
Okay, let's unpack this. Part one, the undisputed what? Let's start there. Who was Renée Good? What do we know for sure about that day?
The facts about the victim are, they're just tragically straightforward. Renée Good, 37 years old, a U.S. citizen.
And a mother of three.
A mother of three. Killed by a federal immigration and customs enforcement officer.
And the context is so important for understanding why people reacted the way they did. I mean, she wasn't in some high-speed chase.
No, not at all. Her ex-husband confirmed she was just driving home with her partner on a snowy street in Minneapolis.
Right after dropping her 6-year-old son off at school. It's the definition of a normal daily routine.
And that really mundane context just collides with the violence you see on the bystander video.
Those videos are everything right now, aren't they?
They're the single most compelling piece of evidence we have. And credible reporting, including from the AP, confirms a very specific and deeply problematic sequence of events.
So walk us through what that footage actually shows.
Okay, so the footage shows federal agents engaging her vehicle. One officer approaches, grabs the door handle.
Okay.
And here's the crucial part. As the vehicle begins to roll forward, a second officer, who is positioned directly in front of the car.
In front of it?
Directly in front. He fires at least 2 shots into the vehicle, close range. And that's what killed Mrs. Good.
And that's the sequence local leaders are pointing to when they say the federal story doesn't add up.
Exactly. That detail, the officer being in front of the moving car, is key. And we'll definitely circle back to why that matters so much for use of force policy.
But the whole thing got complicated almost instantly, right?
Yeah.
Became a national headline because of this jurisdictional fight.
That's the initial governance crisis right there. I mean, normally the state's own investigative body, the Minnesota BCA.
The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Right, the BCA. They would lead this kind of investigation, but they've publicly stated they've been completely cut off, no evidence, no case materials, nothing.
Because the FBI stepped in.
Precisely. The FBI asserted sole control over the entire investigation, citing federal primacy. And that move was immediately met with just sharp public criticism from state and local officials.
They felt frozen out.
Completely.
But to be fair, isn't there a legal argument for that? I mean, for federal primacy, especially when federal agents are involved, isn't the FBI just following protocol?
Legally, yes, you can make a technical argument, but politically and in terms of public trust, it's a disaster.
The optics are terrible.
That's more than optics. This dispute over who investigates the investigators is huge because it immediately reads to the public like the agencies are closing ranks.
Right.
When trust is already low, and let's be honest, that's the national context for almost any police shooting, restricting that outside, non-federal oversight, it doesn't look like protocol. It looks like a power grab designed to stop accountability.
So it sends a message that the system is set up to protect the institution over the individual.
That's it, exactly. This federal exclusion, it erodes the political legitimacy of the investigation, no matter what the legal justification is. It says loud and clear that local governance is being bypassed by a centralized power.
Which leads us right into the clash of stories that really triggered the national outcry. This collision of narratives.
This is why the story just detonated. Within hours, you have this incredibly stark contrast between the official federal story and what everyone else was saying.
The federal narrative came out fast and hard. A DHS spokesperson alleged Renée Good was, quote, attempting to run over officers.
Framing it as simple self-defense. But then DHS leadership went even further.
The domestic terrorism label.
Yes. They publicly characterized the incident as domestic terrorism. And you have to note how quickly and how definitively they rolled that out.
That's an incredible escalation in language. What's the point of that? What does labeling a traffic stop gone wrong as domestic terrorism actually do for them, legally or operationally?
Well, that's the deeper analysis from the sources. Labeling something a terrorist act can trigger specific federal protocols. It gives agencies a potential reason to invoke enhanced secrecy, to centralize information, to bypass local disclosure rules.
All under the banner of national security.
Exactly. It's a powerful lever to justify the FBI's claim of sole jurisdiction and maintain absolute control over the narrative and the evidence.
But local leaders were not having it. They pushed back just as quickly.
They really did. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, Governor Tim Walz, they both publicly and very emphatically disputed that federal framing.
And they pointed to the videos.
They pointed directly to the visual evidence. They, along with the independent observers, are saying the footage does not support the claim that her car was moving into the agents. It looks more like she was trying to accelerate and drive away.
So you have the official federal story of self-defense, terrorism, crashing head-on with the visual evidence, and the local counterclaim that she was just trying to escape.
And when that gap opens up, you stress what the sources call the information contract.
The information contract.
It's about institutional credibility. When officials use these extreme inflammatory terms like terrorism, while the public is watching video that seems to show something else entirely, citizens just see it as propaganda or gaslighting.
They're being taught that official statements aren't about information anymore. They're purely political.
Yes. And that gap, it doesn't just confuse people, it collapses trust in all government statements. It accelerates polarization. Because if you believe the government is lying, well, then every future interaction becomes that much harder to govern.
Which brings us to the national policy implications.
Yeah.
The so what for you, the listener. Because this wasn't just a breakdown in the moment. It looks like it tapped into some really well-known dangerous policy flaws.
We have to talk about the policy on shooting at moving vehicles.
Yeah.
Across all of U.S. policing, local, federal, all of it, this is universally understood to be one of the absolute highest risk things an officer can do.
Why so risky? Beyond the obvious danger to the person in the car.
3 main reasons. First, a vehicle isn't an armored tank. Shooting at it creates a huge risk of collateral damage. Stray bullets, or you hit the driver, and now you have a 2-ton uncontrolled projectile.
Okay.
Second, a moving car is an unstable target. Officers rarely get an effective shot that actually stops the threat. And third, and this is maybe the biggest one, the long-standing best practice is that officers should move out of the path. You don't use the vehicle itself as an excuse for deadly force.
So what do the actual federal rules say?
DOJ policy is very clear. Deadly force is only justified when there is an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury. The standard is incredibly high.
And many agencies have gone even further.
Oh, yes. Many explicitly prohibit shooting at a vehicle just to try and stop it. So the key question here is whether an officer standing in front of a car can credibly claim an imminent threat if they had a clear chance to just move.
And right now we can't get an answer to that because the FBI has blocked the state investigators, the BCA, from doing that kind of policy audit.
Absolutely. That refusal to share evidence is not some minor bureaucratic tiff. It is a profound obstruction of accountability. If the federal government can use legal technicalities to stonewall access, it's a visual demonstration of federal power being used to bypass local oversight. It just destroys institutional credibility.
Looking at the bigger picture here, some of our sources hint at a much larger question. Does all of this, the federal exclusion, the strong narratives, the containment of protests, does it point to a slide towards something authoritarian?
That is the essential macro question.
Yeah.
And, we typically look for 3 things to characterize a system as truly authoritarian: consolidation of power, the complete destruction of any independent oversight, and the successful suppression of dissent.
So where does this Minneapolis situation put us on that spectrum?
The sources suggest we are under significant institutional stress, a crisis of legitimacy. But we're not quite at that irreversible threshold.
Why not?
Because the key mechanism of challenge is still active. While the federal actions definitely feed a perception of diminishing local governance, and the narratives are pouring gasoline on polarization.
People are still pushing back.
The pushback is happening. You have active dissent, open protests. You have elected officials, the mayor, the governor, publicly and legally demanding answers. The press is reporting on the conflict. The fact that the system is even having this legitimacy crisis means the mechanisms for challenge are still working. They're under severe strain, but they're working.
So the next steps from the system are what really matter,
The next response is the ultimate indicator.
which means the battle is on procedural ground right now. So let's get into part 4, paths forward. What are the practical, concrete, maybe even boring steps that can actually de-escalate this?
It has to be about process demands, the boring but effective stuff that stops rumor and distrust from festering. So number one,
Yep.
full immediate transparency.
Meaning, release the videos.
And not just a selectively edited clip. We're talking the full, unedited video set. That includes any federal body cam footage, any dash cam video, everything.
And what about the timeline? The sequence of events?
We need a detailed, published timeline. What was the mission? What commands were given to Miss Good? Where were the agents standing? Exactly when were the shots fired? What was the medical response? Transparency is about context, not just a shocking image.
And that broken investigation structure has to be fixed.
It has to be. The second demand is an inclusive investigation. That means reinstating the BCA in a credible role and creating a real prosecutorial firewall so it's not just the federal government investigating itself.
And finally, that policy question we keep coming back to.
Yes, a mandatory public policy audit. Compare what the agents did against not just DHSIC policy, but against national best practices for shooting at vehicles. And it has to be done by an independent board, with the findings made public.
When you look at the risk assessment and the sources, what are the triggers that could push this from protest into wider violence?
The risk gets critically high if 3 things happen at once. First, perceived impunity. The public believes there will be no justice.
Okay.
Second, the conflicting narratives get so hardened in social media echo chambers that each side believes the other is just evil. And third, if the protests are met with a heavily militarized response, mass deployments, tear gas, that sort of thing.
Yet the government's response to the protests is often the deciding factor.
It is. The sources are crystal clear on this. The single best way to reduce armed outcomes and vigilantism is rapid, credible transparency paired with swift, lawful accountability. It removes the justification people feel they have when the system fails them.
So, to sum this all up,
Yeah.
the shooting of Renée Good blew up into a national flashpoint, not just because of her tragic death. It was the immediate, intentional conflict between federal and local leaders, fueled by secrecy and these completely opposing stories.
That is the core takeaway. Public trust was damaged by that highly charged domestic terrorism language, combined with the lockdown on the investigation. This whole situation is just amplifying the fractures that already exist between communities and centralized law enforcement. It's turned a terrible incident into a major national governance crisis.
This whole event really does reveal these deep stress points in our system, and they demand transparent, accountable answers. But if rapid, credible transparency and lawful accountability are, as the sources say, the single best way to prevent this from escalating,
Then you have to keep watching the procedural demands. The government's continued choice to withhold evidence isn't just a delay, it's a policy decision. And it's a decision that actively determines whether this stays a manageable stress test or spirals into something much worse.
So the question for you to consider is this. What does the continued active choice to withhold critical evidence imply about the priorities of those in institutional control?